I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Welcome to News du Jour. You may be wondering, why am I, Annie Bowles, here hosting this podcast? I usually start by telling people I'm a political baby. You see, my parents met working on Capitol Hill. By the time I was 2, I had been in my first political commercial and even got lost crawling around the West Wing. Don't worry, Al Gore found me. My family then moved abroad when I was 9, and I attended an international school in Brussels with kids from all over the world. And it is this type of global perspective that I also bring to our show. I graduated from American University in DC after studying political science and art history, as well as interning on both sides of Capitol Hill. I even interned down the hall from where my parents met. I'm now pursuing a professional certificate in journalism at NYU in conjunction with Rolling Stone magazine. I guess I was always that friend in the group who cared deeply about not just what was going on politically, but also globally. I often kept my own friends informed through high school and into young adulthood, so I guess I've always done a version of this show. I'm genuinely passionate about following the news, and I'm here to break it down for you guys every weekday. We always strive to be a calmer space to get your news. Or, as one listener put it, like getting your news from a well-informed bestie. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the News du Jour. I feel like I have so much to update you guys on, I don't even know where to begin. But just in case we have anyone new here, I wanted to remind you guys that we take off any major holidays, bank holidays. The OGs know how it works, but essentially I record the day before. So if a holiday falls on a certain day, it would actually affect the following day's episode. So that is why with Easter Sunday, we did not have a Monday episode. Just in case you're ever looking for an episode from us and it's not there, 9 times out of 10, that would be the reason behind it. Occasionally we have technical difficulties, but not very common. Most likely it is that there's a major holiday going on. Because I don't have the ability to plan in advance with a news show that I run by myself, it's really important for me to be able to take breaks from time to time. So this is just how I do that. It gives you guys predictability and also gives me breaks here and there. Thank you guys so much for your support and understanding as per always. This week is set to be a huge week, though, for the Oklahoma Senate bill that we have been following. As you guys already know, our bill has passed Senate committee, a Senate floor vote, House committee, and now it is most likely heading to the House floor either today, tomorrow, or Thursday. We are very nervous because this is one of the last major hurdles for this bill, but with the Senate vote being 45-0 and the House committee vote being 8-0, we definitely feel good about where we're at. You know, we have professional lobbyists helping to whip votes and again, feel very good about where our bill is at. We would really love to have anyone and everyone present at the House vote, as many people as possible, to let our lawmakers know how much this bill really means to everyone and probably go celebrate afterwards. So if you're interested in joining us, please stay tuned on my personal social media at It's Annie Bowles on Instagram to find out the time and date ASAP. I hope you guys have enjoyed following along with this bill and have a little deeper look at the process of how a piece of proposed legislation becomes a law. Nothing in the world would make me happier than to hear from one of you guys in the future that you wrote your own law one day, because this showed you guys the process and how it's not rocket science, as they so badly want you to believe, but rather an intrinsic part of our right to self-determination. And speaking of rights, you guys, I have to tell you about this. I toured the newly opened Mercy Women's Center on Friday, as I let you guys know on our podcast. And giving birth in this type of state of the art facility should also be a right for all life bearers. It is the first facility that I have toured that really felt like it was designed by women for women. And it's right here in Oklahoma City. Here are a few of the features that really stood out to me as a human who has given birth. They have a jacuzzi tub in every room, you guys. Queen size bed so that the whole family can snuggle and bond. Shower jets that are pointed right at your lower back. If you know, you know. ER specifically for pregnant people. This is extremely important in emergency scenarios. I would know. I had to go to the ER several times after giving birth in the postpartum process, and it was terrifying having to recount all of the specifics of my pregnancy and what had happened when, if I had had a specific ER for me with a doctor that, you know, could pull up my case file, it would have saved so much time and conversation. And honestly, that is going to be life-saving for people in the future. Mark my words. And then around-the-clock lactation specialists. This was something that also could have potentially been life-saving for me. It doesn't sound like it, but my son was born with an abnormality in his throat, and he actually choked and turned blue in front of me twice in one night. And if I had been able to meet with a lactation consultant, this is something they could have diagnosed much quicker and potentially saved us from having that terrifying experience. So long story short, round-the-clock lactation specialist, it sounds like a fluffy frou-frou thing, but it is a basic medical care that we don't have right now to support moms. And then pelvic floor personal trainers on site. Again, if you know, you know. Massage therapists on site. They also have a lot of respect for moms who want a natural experience. They have a whole wing that's just designed for that, but you still have the safety of the NICU right upstairs, you know, an elevator ride up rather than a helicopter. And then also they have a lot of specialized, you know, sort of amenities and thought processes put into loss and bereavement. They have a whole special area for families who are experiencing loss. They light a lantern on the floor to let all the other moms know and all the medical teams that there is a loss on the floor so that everyone can be respectful. They also have cold cots donated. This is basically in an effort to give moms as much time as possible with the loss of a child. So long story short, I believe this facility is the future of women's health, and this state-of-the-art facility is right here in Oklahoma City. My mind is blown. I can't wait to see how they expand over the years, but I really just wanted to tell you guys about that because we talk about women's health all the time on this podcast, and I thought it was really important. Now, this is the final thing I'm going to say before we jump into the news for today. I, hand to God, swear. Over the weekend, I had an op-ed published in the newspaper here, the Oklahoman, and it is on the subject of Senate Bill 1470. I am so honored that they published this, and it was really important to me that you guys hear it. So I went ahead and recorded it as a bonus episode for you guys in my own voice, so that should, you know, also be in your feed for today. And that way, if you don't have time to read something, I totally understand. This podcast is designed for women on the go. So this will just make it a little bit easier for you guys to consume that should you choose to. I would really appreciate it if you guys would take a listen because this work is so important to me and I think really important for us all. So thank you guys in advance. And without further ado, we will jump into the news. So today we have one mini story and 3 longer stories. Let's jump in. So for our mini story, I just wanted to let you guys know that there is currently a heart pump on the market that has been linked to 49 deaths. And the FDA is putting out warnings about this device, and it is called an Impella pump. They issued their highest level alert for this pump, seeing as it has been perforating through the walls of people's hearts. The pump is used only temporarily during procedures, but like I said, they've now killed 49 people and injured dozens more, according to the Today Show. This is just something I want you guys to be aware of, and if you or a loved one is having a heart procedure, maybe ask your doctor whether they plan to use this pump or not and steer clear of it if you can, at least for the time being, while they iron out any sort of kinks. And for our first longer story today, Biden, Obama, and Clinton all show up together in a show of force. 3 presidents on one stage, you guys. Can you imagine the Secret Service chaos needed in order to coordinate this effort? Presidents Biden, Obama, and Clinton came together at Radio City Music Hall, projecting party unity and raising $25 million for Biden's re-election campaign. The fundraiser was celebrity-studded with performances by the likes of Lizzo, Lea Michele, Mindy Kaling, Stephen Colbert, and Stephen actually joked that 3 presidents had come to town and, quote, not one of them is here to appear in court, end quote. Obviously a dig at President Trump's many legal issues. Afterward, there was a more intimate group that took to a private room with the president. 175 of Biden's closest financial allies got to get into that inner circle where donors were expected to fundraise no less than $2.5 million a pop in order to enter the room. This event went down right at the tail end of the first quarter, which, according to the New York Times, is a key fundraising deadline. Sources also told the New York Times that former President Barack Obama has been on the phone regularly with Biden, guiding his re-election campaign from the wings, and even hopping on Air Force One for a ride to this event. Together, everyone made the case for Biden, really emphasizing that they believe the fate of our democracy is on the line in this election in potentially electing a man who denies election results and whose supporters took to the Capitol violently to try and keep him in power. And with that, I also wanted to touch on, while the 3 Democrats were sharing a stage with Queen Latifah, just a ferry ride away, Donald Trump was on Long Island holding a rally at the site where a police officer was killed. And obviously, this sort of juxtaposition draws into stark contrast the differences between the 2 platforms right now. Donald Trump is also putting out a Bible as of late, and this is something that I definitely want to dive in deeper on an episode this week, so stay tuned for all of that. For our second longer story today, I wanted to tell you guys about a new Florida law that prevents kids under 14 from having social media accounts. A bill was just signed into law in Florida. The same process, that we're following along here with Oklahoma Senate Bill 1470, I might add. And basically, it will have strong effects on minors under 14 years of age as it bans social media for that age group. Both Democrats and Republicans came together to pass this bill, and it garnered overwhelming support. According to the AP, the original bill actually had stronger language, and as we've talked about quite a bit with Senate Bill 1470, language gets tested and kicked around a lot throughout the process, and obviously for good reason. Everyone gets a chance to weigh in, but not everyone's changes get made. It depends on so many factors, but in this instance, DeSantis thought that the 16-year-old cutoff was a little too harsh, so he actually vetoed that bill, that version of it. But when they came back with an age of 14 as the cutoff, he agreed and he signed the bill into law just yesterday. Florida is not the only state considering such legislation either, and in light of what we're learning about young minds and the addictive nature of social media, these seem to be prudent changes designed to protect young kids and their brains. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of these sorts of changes made in the near future. Hopefully it helps out with mental health for our young people. And that brings us to our final story of the day, which will actually be several updates under one umbrella. We're going to jump into some Israel and Gaza updates. Obviously, have to issue a content warning here. This story involves a war. So thousands of people are taking to the streets protesting Netanyahu. Protests against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have gathered speed as of late, you guys. thousands took to the street to demand elections to try to replace Netanyahu as the leader of Israel. Many feel that he doesn't represent the true will of the people of Israel, or what they want from this war, or what they want for their future. Some protesters had signs that read, quote, "immediate removal," end quote. Others had signs that read, quote, "those who destroyed cannot be the ones to fix," end quote. End quote, "hostage deal now," end quote. We will definitely keep you guys posted on what happens with Netanyahu. Next up in our Israel and Gaza updates, Israel has spent the past 2 weeks raiding hospitals where Hamas has been reportedly hiding out. Al-Shifa has been one of these hospitals, and it was raided before, if you guys remember. There was a lot of video footage of this, but Hamas reportedly returned there to regroup and gather what was left of their plans and belongings, according to Israel. They have also reported killing over 200 militants and detaining, quote unquote, hundreds more, according to the AP. Palestinians have accused Israel, though, of killing many civilians while in the process of hunting down Hamas in these hospitals. However, Israel claims no civilians were harmed in these raids whatsoever. So this is yet another example of completely conflicting stories that we are getting from both sides. In fact, Israel claims to have evacuated 200 patients themselves, providing water and medical supplies to those patients. They also reported that 2 Israeli soldiers were killed in these raids. We'll definitely keep you guys posted, but as always with this subject matter specifically, there's so much false information and information that is just impossible to verify as like an outside news outlet. So I just wanted to preface everything with that and remind you guys to be as media literate as possible when you read something or even see movies, videos. Come at it with a critical eye. And with that being said, I want to tell you guys about the facial recognition tools that Israel is using. So, according to an anonymous source from the Israeli military for the New York Times, facial recognition software is being used to locate and target Palestinians in Gaza. And this source is also backed up by accounts from Palestinians, including a poet, who have been picked out from crowds using their full names. And they were wondering how the Israeli military could have known their first, middle, and last names, in sort of a spur of the moment scenario. Israel reportedly was initially using the technology to locate the hostages, but as we know, Israel is in hot pursuit of very specific Hamas military leaders. So they're almost certainly using this technology to pursue those individuals as well. Critics are obviously worried that this will lead to further dehumanization of Palestinian people. But even the Israeli sources who were coming forward were saying that they're coming forward because they feel this is a waste of time and resources and like a distraction for the Israeli leadership. So this is definitely a hot button topic and one that we will be following very closely because it's being used around the world for nefarious things. And it's just something really important to keep our eye on. And last up for today in our Israel-Gaza updates and last up for our episode, the Israel and U.S. delegations did, in fact, meet about Rafah. So just this past Tuesday, Israel and the U.S. did actually sit down and talk about Rafah as was originally intended. I'm sure it wasn't the most warm and fuzzy of meetings, though, given the lead up to it, with the U.S. abstaining for a vote at the UN and allowing for that resolution for a temporary ceasefire to pass. That said, for obvious reasons, we don't know a ton about what was said in these meetings. These are, incredibly high-level classified matters, but with literally millions of lives at stake, if you guys remember, the U.S. has been saying that while security in Israel is a big priority for us, They do not see a way to logistically invade Rafah in pursuit of Hamas without harming mass amounts of civilians who were told to relocate there. And this has obviously been happening since the start of the war, meaning, civilian deaths in very large numbers. But Rafah would, should it be invaded, would for sure be the deadliest part of this war, bar none. And it's something that the U.S. does not want to participate in. And they've made that very clear over and over again. So it will be very interesting to see what moves, if any, Israel makes after these meetings. We will definitely keep you guys posted. And that for today is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote: "Opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review on that platform or a shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us to be able to keep creating the news du jour and reach more people who need a calmer space to consume the news. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfree media, and that is also linked in our show notes. You can follow us on social media at newsdujour.podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. You can follow my personal account at It's Annie Bowles on both platforms as well. Any little noises you may hear in the background are my rescue pup. He has a little separation anxiety and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from Oklahoma.